That night, I had stayed late at the office, caught up in deadlines and emails that never seemed to end. By the time I finally stepped outside, the loop was almost deserted. The streets glistened under the glow of the streetlights, remnants of an earlier drizzle turning the pavement into a mosaic of neon reflections. I could have called for a rideshare, but after a long day, I just wanted to get home without waiting. The red line was still running, and my apartment was only a few stops away, so I took the subway. The station was nearly deserted when I got there. A homeless man was curled up on a bench, his snores echoing through the cavernous space. A teenage couple sat at the far end of the platform, whispering to each other, their hands intertwined. And then there was him, a man in his late 30s, maybe early 40s, standing a little too close to the edge of the platform. He was tall and thin, dressed in a dark hoodie and jeans. His posture was rigid, his hands buried deep in his pockets. But it was his face that unsettled me, or rather his lack of expression. His eyes were locked on the empty tunnel ahead, unblinking, unmoving. Something about him made my skin crawl. I told myself I was being paranoid. People took the subway at odd hours all the time. Maybe he was just tired, like me. Maybe he had a long day at work and just wanted to get home. But something told me to be careful. The train arrived with a screech of metal against metal. The doors slid open with a mechanical sigh. I stepped inside, choosing a seat near the middle of the car. The teenage couple got on too, sitting close together, giggling. The homeless man stayed behind. So did he. At least that's what I thought, until the doors were about to close. At the last possible second, the man stepped inside. He didn't rush. He didn't even seem to notice the doors nearly clipping him. He just glided in like he had all the time in the world and sat directly across from me. I looked away, pretending to check my phone. No signal. Of course, I could feel his gaze on me. For the first few minutes, I tried to ignore him. I focused on the graffiti scrawled across the subway ads, the rhythmic sway of the train, but I could feel him staring. When I finally looked up, his eyes were locked onto mine. A deep, unblinking stare. Not curiosity, not boredom, just watching. I forced a polite, uneasy smile before quickly looking back down. My fingers tightened around my purse. Something was wrong. I turned my attention to the teenage couple. They were lost in their own world, whispering and giggling, completely unaware. The man tilted his head slightly, as if studying me. A cold prickle ran down my spine. The train rattled through the tunnels, station after station passing by. I kept expecting him to get off, but he didn't. Every time I glanced up, his eyes never left me. Then, without warning, he smiled. Not a friendly smile, not a reassuring one. A slow, knowing smile. Like he had figured something out about me, like he was enjoying this. I swallowed hard. My mind raced. Was he just a creep, or was it something worse? I needed to get off at the next stop. The train slowed, the automated voice announcing 34th Street, Penn Station. I stood up, gripping the metal pole for support, pretending like this was my stop. The teenage couple didn't move. The man didn't move either. I waited. The doors slid open. I stepped forward, and so did he. I froze. A second passed, then another. The doors began to close. I panicked, stepping back onto the train at the last second. So did he. He hadn't been trying to get off. He had been waiting to see what I would do. My stomach twisted. He was following me. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just wait for him to make a move. I scanned the train. The teenage couple was still there, oblivious. The rest of the car was empty. No one to help me. I took a deep breath and did something I never thought I'd do. I turned to the couple and said, loud enough for them to hear, "Hey, I think we have a mutual friend." They blinked at me in confusion. The man across from me stiffened. I forced a nervous laugh, stepping closer to the couple. "You were at Lisa's party, right?" I asked, eyes pleading. The girl hesitated, then caught on. "Oh yeah, of course," she said a little too loudly. I nodded, stepping between them and the man. "I was just about to get off at the next stop. Mind if I walk with you guys?" The boy glanced at the man, then back at me. He wasn't stupid. He understood what was happening. "Yeah, sure," he said. The man's smile faded. The train slowed. As soon as the doors opened, I stepped out with the couple, walking quickly, pretending we were friends heading somewhere together. The man didn't follow. The doors closed behind us. I turned. He was still sitting there, still staring, his head tilted at that unnatural angle, still smiling, The train pulled away. I thanked the couple, my voice shaking, and made my way to the station exit. I didn't stop walking until I was back on the crowded streets, surrounded by people. I never saw the man again. But for weeks I kept thinking about him. His stare, his smile, the way he mirrored my every move. I started taking cabs home after work, avoiding the subway entirely. I told myself I was just being paranoid. The fluorescent lights buzzed like dying insects as I slumped onto a cracked plastic bench. 11:47 p.m. The digital sign flickered. Next train, 12:16 a.m. in sickly green letters. I cursed under my breath. Another delay. The platform was deserted, save for a janitor mopping coffee stains near the escalators and a homeless man snoring under a moth-eaten blanket. The air smelled of urine and burnt wiring. I pulled my coat tighter. My shift at the hospital had ended hours ago, but a code blue. A patient crashing, frantic CPR, the hollow wail of a flatline, had trapped me in purgatory. Now, all I wanted was to collapse into bed. That's when I noticed the girl. She stood at the edge of the platform, her back to me, staring into the tunnel's black mouth. Her red hoodie was frayed at the sleeves and her sneakers were caked in mud. Something about her posture felt wrong, rigid, like a marionette mid-dance. I glanced at the janitor. He'd vanished. "Hey," I called out. She didn't move. The homeless man snorted in his sleep. A rat skittered over the tracks. "Miss, you okay?" Slowly she turned. Her face was pale, her eyes glassy. Late teens, maybe. A faint bruise bloomed on her cheekbone. "I'm fine," she said flatly. I hesitated. "Train's late. You should step back. It's not safe." Her lips twitched. "Safe?" The word hung in the air, sharp as a blade. The man appeared like a shadow. One moment, the platform was empty. The next, he stood beside the vending machine, staring at us. Tall, gaunt, wearing a trench coat too heavy for September. His hands were gloved. The girl stiffened. "Friend of yours?" I whispered. She shook her head. The man didn't move, didn't blink. His gaze locked onto the girl. My pulse quickened. Paranoia, I told myself. You're exhausted. But the ER had taught me to trust instincts. I stood, pretending to check the schedule, and positioned myself between the girl and the stranger. "Need help?" I asked her. Her voice trembled. "He's been following me." "For how long?" "3 stops." I pulled out my phone. No signal, of course. Subway dead zones. Classic. The homeless man woke abruptly, coughing. The stranger's head snapped toward the sound. For a split second, his coat shifted, revealing a glint of metal at his hip. Not a gun. A knife? Handcuffs? "Come on," I said to the girl. "Let's wait by the token booth." She hesitated, then followed. The stranger mirrored us, step for step. The next 20 minutes crawled. The janitor never returned. The homeless man muttered Bible verses. The girl, Lila, she said, claimed she'd run away from a bad situation upstate. She refused details. The stranger kept his distance, but never looked away. "What does he want?" I asked. Lila hugged herself. "He told me I owe him. Money? Something worse." A train roared into the station. Not ours, the downtown line. The stranger boarded, still staring. The doors closed. Lila exhaled. Thank God. But as the train pulled away, he stood on the opposite platform, watching us through the grimy windows.